Have you ever wondered what happened to all those vintage audio brands from the 1970s and the 1980s? And I mean, what really happened? The real story that they're probably not telling you. Well, in this documentary, I'm going to expose what happened to all these major brands, including SANSUI, AKAI, JBL, TECHNICS, Marantz, and even BOSE. You won't hear the real story anywhere else. Over the years, I have uncovered countless secrets about the history and downfalls of different hi-fi companies from the 1970s and the 1980s. Well, I've compiled them all, exposed and uncovered everything about them, and I'm putting it in this one documentary. And let's start with one of the most mysterious stories in hi-fi history, and that is the unreal story behind AKAI. He mysteriously disappeared. 80 million completely gone, and he was never found. AKAI was once one of the largest hi-fi companies in the entire world. Their Tokyo factories employing over 100,000 workers, surpassing 40 billion in sales. Then overnight, AKAI was gone. Here is what happened. AKAI was founded by Masakichi AKAI in July of 1929 as a manufacturer of radio components and electrical parts. Masakichi's business expanded rapidly through the 20s and 30s. His eldest son Saburo grew up in the factory and later enrolled himself in night school at the Tokyo Institute of Technology to study electrical machinery. As AKAI grew, they expanded in the production of electrical motors, due largely to Saburo's new expertise in electrical engineering. The new business generated by the production of electrical motors allowed the father-son team to move their facilities from their backyard premises to a larger factory in Kamata in 1933. Everything was going great for AKAI until the onset of World War II, where only 10 days after getting married in 1939, Saburo would get drafted. During the war, Masakichi needed to sell off all his equipment and even the premises. This looked to be the end of AKAI before the hi-fi company even got started. Everything was bought by a company called Sawafuji Electric. After the war ended, Saburo came home to find the company sold, but his father secured him a job as part of the sale with Sawafuji Electric as an engineer, thanks to his schooling. Business was still booming, and so good that by 1947, Saburo raised his capital investment in the new firm, bought back the Kamata plant from Sawafuji, and changed the name of the company to the AKAI Electrical Company. By 1948, AKAI started selling phonograph motors. At this time, technology was changing rapidly and there was a demand for higher precision record players. And AKAI would accept that challenge by upgrading the technology of their phono motors. AKAI was one of the few medium-sized companies to export goods without going through a wholesaler. Saburo had advertised in the American technical journal Electronics. The headline, "Why Not Buy AKAI Technology?" generated several inquiries from various companies, including Roberts Electronics. Roberts presented Saburo with an overwhelming demand for literally anything AKAI was producing, and both Roberts and AKAI's business started to rapidly grow. Saburo was curious as to what Roberts was doing with their products. In response, Roberts sent AKAI a tape recorder. Technicians at AKAI would quickly look this recorder over and build their own in response. They sent the new AKAI-built tape recorder to Roberts, and in response to that, Roberts was quick to ask them to start manufacturing for them, and in return, Roberts would handle worldwide sales. In 1954, AKAI built their first tape recorder, the AT-1. The AT-1 came as a kit for the consumer to build. A very simple design, the AT-1 was a tube reel-to-reel whose chassis was built with heavy-duty steel, and it had a fairly simple belt and motor design. The AT-1 would be followed by the Model 900, which was even more well received. Orders started flying in, and because of the immense sales, Saburo decided to journey to the US to further study the market. He quickly realized that he would need to up the quality of his product to sell in that American market. In 1957, AKAI introduced the deluxe mono version of the 900 and a stereo version the following year. At this point, AKAI started to have a firm grasp on the market. And 1958 would also be the year that Saburo finally took over the role as president of AKAI from his father. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, most music listening consisted of listening to live performances, the radio, and the record player. But AKAI was promoting the pleasures of listening to tape recordings, and the fact that, unlike other music sources, the listener listener could record anything they wanted. 1960 brought the release of the first AKAI and Roberts co-branded tape recorder, the Duet 191 FT. This was a mono recorder with an external amplifier and speakers. AKAI tape recorders would continue to be branded Roberts in the US market, and despite the wide range of other recorder manufacturers, AKAI sales were exceptionally high. Throughout the 1960s, AKAI would continue to make a reputation as a producer of premier audio tape recorders. Now, 1962 brought the debut of the AKAI M7, which I have seen branded under both the AKAI and the Roberts names, followed by its successor, the M8, in 1964. AKAI equipped them with the new X-Field magnetic recording system. The X-Field system was from when AKAI adopted Tandberg's crossfield recording technologies, the use of an extra tape head, to enhance high-frequency recording. These two models sold over 160,000 units in just 4 years, and it firmly established AKAI as the leader in the tape field. In 1970, AKAI set up AKAI America in the States. AKAI wanted to brand their products under the name AKAI going forward instead of Roberts, as their franchise for North America was set to expire in 1971. AKAI would continue a relationship with Roberts going forward for certain products. AKAI then would debut their first full line of tape players at CES later that year. This lineup included models already in production, as well as several new models as well. Here's a look at many of the AKAI reel-to-reels made during the 1970s. Let me know in the comments which ones that you have owned or wanted to own. AKAI had several reel-to-reels during the 1970s, including the 4000 series. They also had the X series featuring standard permalloy heads. This series included the 1800 series, the 2000 series, and the X5000. As an improvement over the X series, AKAI released the GX series featuring the newer glass heads. This series includes the GX200 series, the GX300 series, and the GX620, 630, and 650D. Most of the reel-to-reels were 2 tracks, but if you see an SS after the model's name, that means they were 4-track reels, like the GX280D SS, the 130D SS, and the GX400 DSS. AKAI also made a few dB models which included Dolby noise reduction built in, such as the 4000 dB, the GX600 dB, and the GX630 dB. Now, several of these models featured built-in speakers, 8 tracks, and even cassette decks. The letter D after the model signified it's just a deck without an amplifier or speakers. The finishes for these reels were available in wood and leather on some models. Now, this was signified by the W or the L at the end of the model number so that you could pick which one you wanted. As you can see, AKAI during the 1970s paved the way for tape recorders. They led the market, and they would continue to do so into the early 1980s. AKAI. New models in the 1980s, and AKAI's tape decks from the 1980s tended to hold up better over time. They featured shiny faceplates and were just some of the best looking decks ever. AKAI even made pro tape recorders like the highly regarded Pro 1000 and incorporated some modern or futuristic designs like the popular GX77. An attempt to bolster flagging sales by the now declining reel-to-reel marketplace, AKAI came up with this striking, small, and easy-to-use machine that would, with its 7-inch reel capacity, fit into almost any HiFi console, much like a cassette deck. The GX77 was available from 1982 to 1984 in silver or black and retailed for about $800. But the most famous AKAI reel-to-reel tape decks ever made, and the final in production for AKAI, were the 600 series and the renowned 747. The 600 series consists of the GX625, the GX635, the GX636, and the GX646. You can typically find this series at a less expensive price tag than the 747, with only a few less features. But my favorite part of this series is the RC70 remote. I know you thought I was going to say it was some recording feature, but no, the remote was more fun. Now, in a previous video at our old location, we took this remote to the streets to see how far of a distance that it would work from. All right, Cole, head back. Keep going. Oh, this is so cool. At Monica's desk? Oh, behind the desk. Go in the bathroom. Coming in at a whopping 46 pounds, this AKAI GX635D takes no prisoners. With its 62 dB signal-to-noise ratio, a 0.04% wow and flutter, and a total harmonic distortion at only 0.5%, the only thing that could make this better would be a remote control. But roto-reels don't have remotes, while this one does. From downtown. Ha ha ha! This remote is brand new, so we're gonna see how far this remote works from. All right, Cole, head back behind the desk. Go in the bathroom. It works from the bathroom. Dude, we should take that out on the street. Ah! Works from the middle of the street. Now, the last tape recorder manufactured by AKAI, the AKAI GX747, is mainly an updated version of the previous AKAI 646 and its previous versions. But it's probably the most well-remembered tape recorder of all time. Now, the standard version was available in silver and black with LED meters, but the DBX version was only available with VU meters, but also in silver and black. AKAI also made some great hi-fi components in the late 1970s and early 1980s, such as the AM2650 that was featured in one of our previous catalogs, and AKAI's biggest receiver of all time, the AA1200, which we featured in our recent video where I tried out every monster receiver from the Stereo Wars era. During the 1980s, AKAI, like many other brands, were also building VCRs. I mean, it makes sense, a VCR is more or less just a reel-to-reel with video heads. AKAI would build the very first VCR with an on-screen display, the AKAI VS2. Originally named the Interactive Monitor System, it displayed the system information directly on the TV, and this invention would eliminate the need for the user to be physically near the VCR to program or recording, read the counter, or perform other features. Then a few years, all competing manufacturers such as Sony and JVC adopted this technology. AKAI would start manufacturing a lot more audio-video equipment in the mid-1980s, everything from TVs to camcorders. In the mid-80s, AKAI focus was going digital. Much like many other companies, due to production costs, they started moving production out of Japan. The products to follow would be cheaper-made, mass-market rack systems. Sold as matching components, you could get an entire rack system consisting of an amplifier, a tuner, a CD player, a cassette deck, turntable, and even storage for your vinyl, all for the price of one high-end audio component. It took hi-fi mainstream, but it was more mid-fi. Now, AKAI was still building some high-end products during the 1980s and early 1990s, like the Reference Master series. This was considered a handsome yet rugged system, with cutting-edge technical innovation, such as multi-stage noise shaping digital to analog conversion. There was also the AM series, which was the tier right under the Reference, which featured a much higher build quality than a typical stereo of the 1990s. This would be comparable to, let's say, a Sony ES system. But unlike these high-end reference systems, most of their audio division was focused on those full audio rack systems because there was just a larger market and an even bigger bottom line. This was the last of AKAI's product line, at least to my knowledge from what I could find. So what happened? Well, to find this out, we're going to have to look to the top of the company, the chairman, James Ting. In August 1993, James Ting, CEO of the sewing machine maker Singer, gave a breakfast presentation to a group of investors at the Four Seasons Hotel in Vancouver, Canada. He was trying to raise $850 million in a mix of common stock and zero-coupon bonds. He told them what he was going to do with their money. The sequence of events was a bit complicated. The securities were to be issued by the Canadian holding company Ting controlled called Semitech Corp. Semitech would send money to another Ting-controlled entity, this one based in Hong Kong, called Semitech Global, later renamed AKAI. With the cash, the Hong Kong company would leverage Singer's brand name and global distribution network into a Japanese-style conglomerate. They would make not just sewing machines, but washing machines, cassette players, refrigerators, you name it. The scheme won the underwriting endorsement of two distinguished investment banks, and Ting got all his money. 6 years later, in 1999, all the money was gone. Singer's successor to the respected 19th century manufacturer went into Chapter 11 bankruptcy in September, and its 18,000 employees left to wonder what would become of them. Ting, now 72 years old, was last known living in Hong Kong, and he maintained that Singer was the unfortunate victim of the Asian debt crisis. But there's more to this story. The story starts in the early 1970s as Shanghai-born Ting immigrated to Canada from Hong Kong to study engineering at the University of Toronto. He worked as a janitor to finance his education and started SEMI-TECH Corp in 1981 as an assembler of personal computers. Ting struck it rich when his accountant introduced him to Hong Kong billionaire Stanley Ho, who was looking for investments outside of Hong Kong. By then, Ting controlled two companies, the Canadian SEMI-TECH Corp and a publicly traded Hong Kong subsidiary in which it had a 42% stake in, called SEMI-TECH Global, or AKAI. The other 58 of SEMI-TECH Global was owned by the insiders, including Ting, and by the public. At the time, Singer was a conglomerate controlled by the corporate raider Paul Bilzerian. Founded as a sewing machine manufacturer in 1851, Singer had long since diversified into the aerospace and electronics business. By the time Ting came calling, it was beginning to sell off pieces of its sewing machine business, which included both factories and a worldwide collection of retail outlets. But the brand had value, and it was recognized the world over. In the late 1980s, Ting reassembled the Singer empire. He incorporated it as Singer NV in the Netherlands and took ownership into his Hong Kong-based holdings company, AKAI. Then in 1991, he took Singer public. He listed the shares on the New York Stock Exchange. Now, Ting cut costs at Singer by moving the manufacturing of sewing machines out of Brazil and Italy to China. In 1992, he bought a stake in SANSUI as well, a Japanese amplifier maker, for $58 million. If you want to find out more about SANSUI, check out that video. Then he purchased AKAI, a Japanese manufacturer of low-end video and audio equipment at the time, for $172 million. And he also purchased Konghua, a Hong Kong-based television set maker, for $300 million. Most of the operations were currently losing money, but Ting figured that Singer's huge marketing operation, 13,000 outlets, and 7,000 door-to-door salesmen would come to the rescue. Within a few years, Ting had transformed himself into a tycoon, best known for being chauffeured around in Rolls Royces. He presided over the company now with sales above $2 billion. But while Ting micromanaged, he failed to include his outside directors in such important corporate decisions as acquisitions. Ting's empire began to unravel after the Asian devaluations of 1997. Ting announced a sweeping reorganization, including firing 5,000 Singer workers over 3 years. Singer reported a loss of $238 million for 1997. Singer was in real trouble, but Ting spent all its cash as if there was no tomorrow. And that same year, Ting also had Singer shut down a money-losing furniture maker that was also owned by SEMI-TECH Global. And that same month, SEMI-TECH Corp of Canada filed for bankruptcy. The only entity that seems to have survived is Ting's Hong Kong company, SEMI-TECH Global, otherwise known as AKAI. But in 1999, even AKAI would break into two. AKAI and AKAI Professional, which is their pro instrument division, started back in 1984. It then emerged that a year earlier, James Ting, the chairman of AKAI, transferred ownership of AKAI and SANSUI over to Grande Holdings, which, get this, was also owned by James Ting. Liquidators would come to find out that since 1994, with the help of his accountants, Ernst & Young, Ting had stolen over $800 million from AKAI. Ting would later be imprisoned for false accounting in 2005, and his accountants Ernst & Young would negotiate out a court settlement for over $200 million. AKAI filed for insolvency in the year 2000, owing creditors over $1 billion. Ting then fled to Canada to avoid investigation by Canadian and U.S. authorities, and eventually he was forced to return to Hong Kong, but left for China to avoid being investigated by Hong Kong's regulators from 2000 to 2003. Now in 2003, he was forced to return to Hong Kong, where he was later arrested and investigated by the Hong Kong Police's Commercial Crimes Bureau. And on June 29, 2005, he was convicted to 2 counts of false accounting and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. But after serving only 1 year, Ting's conviction was overturned by Hong Kong's Court of Appeals, and he escaped retrial in 2006, then escaped another in 2007. Ting, now 72, is nowhere to be found. He's completely disappeared, and he has $800 million with him. And AKAI wasn't the only company that mysteriously vanished. Now, let's check out the rise and fall of Technics. Technics, the illustrious hi-fi brand positioned on the razor's edge of technology for generations, one day vanished. What caused their epic rise to the top, and whose fault was their turbulent fall? And could they ever rise back up from the ashes? Here's what happened to Technics. Technics, a subsidiary of the Japanese giant Panasonic, was founded in 1965 by Matsushita Electric Industrial Co. From its inception, Technics aimed to push the boundaries of audio fidelity, setting a new standard for sound reproduction. The brand's early products, including amplifiers and speakers, quickly gained recognition for their superior build quality and performance. The birth of Technics marked a turning point in the audio industry. Matsushita recognized the growing demand for high-quality audio equipment and decided to create a separate brand dedicated to catering audiophiles and music enthusiasts. Thus, Technics was born and embarked on a journey to redefine what was possible in sound reproduction. In 1965, Technics made its debut under National Panasonic as the Technics One loudspeaker. The Technics One loudspeaker was a sealed two-way speaker system with a power rating of 12 watts into 8 ohms. It proved to be a successful product, and the early triumph paved the way for Technics to continue its journey of innovation and introduce more groundbreaking products. Just a year later, in 1966, Panasonic unveiled the Technics 20A tube amplifier. This stunning amplifier boasted a powerful 80 watts per channel, an impressive feat for its time. It featured 20 pentode tubes and utilized OTL circuitry, enhancing the overall performance and fidelity of the sound. To complement the Technics 20A amplifier, Panasonic also introduced the Technics 10A preamplifier the same year. The Technics 10A preamplifier incorporated negative feedback circuitry, a revolutionary design element that reduced distortion and expanded the dynamic range, providing music enthusiasts with an unparalleled listening experience. The year 1968 marked a significant milestone as Panasonic decided to combine the Technics 20A amplifier and the 10A preamplifier into a single integrated amplifier, leading to the birth of the Technics 30A. The 30A was an improvement over its predecessor, the 10A, featuring lower distortion and an improved signal-to-noise ratio. It also introduced a newly designed RIAA circuit, elevating the fidelity of vinyl playback. In 1969, 1 year after the Technics 30A, Panasonic unveiled the Technics 50A, a solid-state integrated amplifier that represented a departure from tube-based technology. The 50A retained the timeless aesthetics of a classic Macintosh amplifier, complete with a green backlight and distinctive glass faceplate. This amplifier was a testament to Technics' commitment to both innovation and design, even though it kind of looked like a Macintosh. However, it was the product introduced 1 year later in 1970 that would become the catalyst for the company's trajectory over the next 5 decades. The 1970s were a defining era for music, with rock and roll, disco, and the beginnings of electronic music taking the world by storm. For the discerning audiophile, it was also the age of high-fidelity sound systems. At the center of this hi-fi revolution was Technics, the audio brand introduced by National Panasonic. While the 1970s saw the rise of various audio equipment brands, few could match the innovation and craftsmanship of Technics. In the realm of flagship products and innovations during the 1970s, Technics stood out remarkably. The early part of the decade was marked by the release of the Technics SP10 turntable, which was no ordinary record player. Representing a groundbreaking approach, it was the world's pioneering turntable to feature a direct drive motor. Its unmatched precision, coupled with a robust performance, resonated deeply with audiophiles worldwide. Further amplifying its appeal was its adaptability, with the brand offering a range of optional add-ons, from custom tone arms to elegant wood bases and protective dust covers. As with any brand pushing the boundaries, Technics found its share of controversies. One notable incident was the skepticism surrounding this direct drive turntable technology. Traditionalists believed that the belt drive system was superior, with its ability to absorb motor vibrations. However, Technics' innovation in direct drive mechanics eventually gained acceptance, proving that it could provide consistent speeds and reduced wear and tear. However, Technics did not stop there. 1972 heralded the introduction of the revered 10,000 series. Notable components of this series, like the SU-10000 preamp and the SE-10000 amplifier, became stalwarts in the brand's lineup, renowned for their superior sonic output. Not to mention those incredible 10,000 speakers that just look absolutely wild. The 1970s, a transformative era for music and audio technology, witnessed the introduction of a turntable that would go on to become legendary, the Technics SL-1200. Launched in 1972 by the pioneering brand Technics, the SL-1200 wasn't just another turntable, it was a masterstroke in precision engineering and design. With its innovative direct drive mechanism, it offered unparalleled speed stability, reducing the common distortions experienced with belt drive systems. It rapidly garnered admiration not only from audiophiles for its impeccable sound fidelity, but also from DJs for its robust build and consistent performance. The SL-1200's sleek design, combined with features such as pitch control and a durable tone arm, made it a feature in both home audio setups and the club scene. Its introduction marked a paradigm shift in the world of turntables, setting new standards and laying the groundwork for its continued legacy in the world of audio equipment. Technics was not just about producing great products, they were also about breaking new ground in audio technology. And one of the significant innovations in the 1970s was the development of the Class A amplifier system, which delivered cleaner, more robust sounds, reducing distortions and setting new standards of audio clarity. As the decade progressed, 1977 emerged as another landmark year for Technics. This was the year the brand unveiled two of its masterpieces, the SU-A2 preamplifier, celebrated for its all-stage Class A operation, and the SE-A1 amplifier, an embodiment of powerful and intricate amplifier design, effortlessly delivering a staggering 350 watts per channel. In the days of the 1970s stereo wars, the Technics SA-1000 emerged not just as another contender, but as an unparalleled behemoth, casting a long, distinguished shadow across the audio landscape. With a staggering power output that dwarfed even its eminent siblings in the Technics SA series, such as the SA-600 and the SA-800, it was the SA-1000 that became the stuff of legends. This era witnessed the release of some of the most iconic receivers, with the Marantz 2600, the Sansui 9090, and the Pioneer SX1980, each carving their niche, presenting listeners with a symphony of unique features. However, the SA-1000 resonated on a different frequency. Its staggering 330 watts per channel showcased its unmatched prowess, creating soundscapes that seemed richer and more expansive, while the Marantz 2600 was celebrated for its elegance and the Sansui 9090 for its finesse. The SA-1000's extremely low harmonic distortion of 0.03% stood out, delivering clarity and precision that was unparalleled. Even the Pioneer SX1980, my favorite receiver, with its own revered clarity, seemed to play second fiddle to the impeccable engineering of the SA-1000. One thing was clear by the end of the decade: Technics won the stereo wars. Technics solidified its legacy not merely with its famed turntables and receivers, but also with its meticulously crafted reel-to-reel tape decks. Models like the RS-1500 and the RS-1700 became staples for serious audiophiles, lauded for their mechanical precision and sonic clarity. With gleaming brushed metal finishes and robust build quality, these machines were as much a visual statement as they were sonic masterpieces. Beyond the decks themselves, Technics also introduced accessories that enhanced the reel-to-reel experience. Their precision-engineered NAB hub adapters ensured tapes spun true and even, while the RP90-110 dust cover protected these cherished machines from environmental wear and tear. For those desiring greater control from a distance, the RP90-690 remote control became an indispensable tool. And for the traveling audiophile or the professional, the RP90-100 Road Case, which I literally just learned about, offered robust protection, ensuring their beloved reel-to-reels remained pristine even when on the move. For many, owning a Technics reel-to-reel such as the iconic RS-1500 wasn't just about possessing a playback device. It was about holding a piece of audio artistry. And as the world transitioned into newer digital formats, the allure of the revered Technics reel-to-reel masterpieces remained untarnished, echoing an era of unparalleled audio authenticity. The 1970s were undoubtedly a golden era for Technics. The relentless push for innovation combined with an unyielding commitment to quality set them apart, while the SL-1200 turntable and the SA-1000 receiver often steal the spotlight, it's essential to recognize the breadth of Technics' contributions during this decade, laying the foundation for the brand's legendary status in the audio world. As the 1980s unveiled a blend of neon lights and sweeping cultural revolutions, the world of music and audio technology witnessed its own kind of renaissance. Between the rise of the compact disc, the Walkman, and the personal computer age, Technics emerged as a brand that melded innovation with artistry. The Technics SL1200 series may have entered the 1980s with an unbeatable reputation, but it wasn't alone. Alongside it was the Technics SL10, a direct drive turntable that was as sophisticated as it was compact. Renowned for its sleek design and horizontal playing capability, the SL10 further solidified Technics' prowess in the turntable domain. Then, there was the upgraded SL1200 MK2 with its quartz-locked pitch slider, cementing its place in nightclubs, radio stations, and audiophile collections globally. The 1980s weren't just about vinyl though, they marked the dawn of the compact disc. And just as they had done with turntables, Technics made their mark with CD players. Enter the Technics SLP10, a representation of the brand's commitment to embracing the future. This CD player wasn't just about playing digital discs, it was about delivering exceptional audio quality, emphasizing Technics' expertise in both old and new formats. The Technics SUV series amplifiers personified the audacious spirit of the 1980s. Units like the SUV6 and the SUV8 stood tall, but they were more than just powerhouses. They were symbols of audio precision with a clear and consistent output. They became essential for those who sought audio excellence. In a decade filled with innovations, Technics wasn't just focusing on the source of the sound, but also on how it was delivered. Their SST1 speakers were a testament to this. With their unique design and emphasis on linear phase technology, these speakers aimed to offer sound that was not just heard, but felt, ensuring that music wasn't just a listening experience, but an immersive journey. Innovation was Technics' watchword of the 1980s. Computer-controlled systems emerged, linear phase speaker systems evolved, and direct drive turntable technology reached new heights. Technics was not just part of the 1980s audio revolution, they were often leading it. Yet, success is often accompanied by scrutiny. As Technics forged ahead, debates arose. The sound quality of certain devices, including some CD players, became points of contention among purists. And with a broad product range, the brand faced its own identity challenges, constantly balancing between professional DJs and home-based audiophiles. As the final decade of the 20th century dawned, the audio landscape braced for seismic shifts. Digital technologies were no longer on the horizon, they were very much here, and their influence on audio was undeniable. Against this backdrop, Technics, Panasonic's venerated audio arm, sought to blend its esteemed legacy with newfound innovations. During the 1990s, the Technics SLPG series rose to prominence, emerging as a trusted line for CD playback. Two standout models from this range were the SLPG 440 and the SLPG 490. The 440 was admired for its reliability and ease of use, making it a favorite from those transitioning from vinyl to CD. Meanwhile, the 490, often deemed as a workhorse, was notable for its direct optical readout and MASH 1-bit conversion, offering listeners a detailed and dynamic sound signature. Together, these models help reinforce Technics' commitment to delivering quality digital audio experiences at an affordable price. The SUV series continued to be a dominant force in the 1990s, with models like the SUV 470 and the SUV 7, resonating particularly well among audiophiles. The 470, for instance, was lauded for its VC4 amplifier system, delivering a warm and rich sound. On the other hand, the V7 showcased a unique design and boasted a bevy of features that set it apart, reinforcing Technics' capability to blend aesthetics with functionality. Technics' commitment to vinyl was unwavering. Even in the digital-heavy 1990s, the decade saw the rise of the SL1200 MK3 and the specially crafted SL1200 MK4, a testament to the brand's enduring love for analog sound. As Technics strived to serve both analog and digital enthusiasts, they found themselves in a quandary. Products like the SL-PS770 CD player and the Technics SL1200 MK6 turntable were a prime example of this balancing act. The turn of the millennium saw a deluge of audio brands, often offering competitive features at reduced prices. Technics' higher-end models like the SAGX 530 and the SADA10 were often compared against more budget-friendly options for emerging brands, compelling Technics to defend their premium positioning. With the rise of devices like the iPod, there was a clear market shift towards portable audio solutions. Technics, historically known for its stationary audio systems, responded with products like the Technics SL-XP505 portable CD player and matching headphones. These models were Technics' nod to the on-the-go consumer. As the 21st century dawned, the music industry underwent seismic shifts. The 2000s were not just about new gadgets and gizmos, they represented a fundamental change in how people experienced and engaged with music. Technics, rooted in a rich history of analog excellence, found itself navigating these choppy waters of change. At the heart of this transformation was the digitalization of music. CDs had already marked the beginning of this shift in the late 20th century, but the 2000s accelerated it. File formats like the MP3 became household names, compressing music into easily shareable and downloadable units. This convenience, though a boon for many, posed challenges for brands like Technics, which had championed the full rich sound of analog formats. Platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and Pandora began to dominate, changing not just how we listen to music, but also how we discovered it. The album culture, where one would sit down and immerse oneself in an artist's vision from start to finish, began to wane in favor of playlists and singles. For Technics, this meant rethinking product lines and functionalities, shifting focus from standalone players to integrated systems compatible with streaming technologies. While vinyl saw a nostalgic resurgence among aficionados, the broader market moved away from tangible music formats. Digital libraries and cloud storage made vast music collections portable and easily accessible. Technics, with its legacy rooted in turntables and physical sound systems, had to innovate and diversify to stay relevant. As the 2000s drew to a close, a palpable melancholy descended upon the audio community. The horizon darkened for Technics, a brand that had for decades illuminated the world of high-fidelity sound. In 2010, a somber announcement sent ripples across the globe. Technics would cease the production of the revered SL-1200 turntable series. To many, this wasn't just the end of a product line, it felt like the fading notes of a beloved symphony. The SL-1200, with its iconic design and unparalleled performance, had been the linchpin of countless musical memories, from house parties to professional DJ setups. It was a testament to the brand's commitment to unmatched quality and its enduring bond with music lovers. Behind this heart-wrenching decision were mounting challenges. The brand, despite its storied legacy, grappled with adapting to a rapidly evolving market landscape. External pleasures, from emerging technologies to fierce competition, had taken their toll. But it wasn't just about market metrics. It was the end of an era, a chapter closing on a tapestry woven with passion, innovation, and dedication. As turntables spun their last records and Technics logos dimmed in stores, the world mourned their loss. But deep within, fans held on to hope, whispering tales of possible resurgence, dreaming of a dawn when Technics would rise again, reborn from its own legacy. It wouldn't be long after this that several factors would lead to Panasonic shutting down the Technics brand in 2010. The 2010 saw a rise in the demand for portable audio solutions like Bluetooth speakers and headphones. Brands like Beats and BOSE dominated this space, leaving traditional hi-fi companies grappling for relevance. The challenges Technics faced weren't just economical or technological, they were deeply emotional. The brand had cultivated a loyal following over the decades. For many, Technics was not just a brand, it was an integral part of their musical journey. The thought of the legacy brand going under was a bitter pill for the audio community to swallow. Technics' struggles during the 2000s offer crucial lessons for both businesses and consumers. Brands must remain agile and adaptable, willing to evolve with changing market dynamics. At the same time, consumers play a vital role in shaping the fate of brands, underscoring the importance of supporting companies that resonate with their values and preferences. Now, 2014 brought with it whispers of nostalgia and anticipation in the audio community, culminating in the much-awaited revelation Technics was making its grand return. This wasn't just a relaunch, it was a harmonious blend of Technics' storied legacy with fresh innovations. Among the standout mentions were the SL1200G turntable, revisiting the brand's iconic history, and the SUG700 integrated amplifier, a symbol of its forward-thinking approach. By weaving the cherished sounds of analog with the precision of modern digital technologies, Technics signaled not just a homage to its past, but a vibrant vision for the future. Now, Technics had a happy ending, but the next brand does not. SANSUI was a major manufacturer in the 1970s and the 1980s, and they ceased to exist today. This is the truth that I have uncovered about SANSUI. One of the most iconic hi-fi brands, SANSUI, literally disappeared from the hi-fi landscape. But when did this happen? How did this happen? And is there anything left of them today? This story is filled with corporate buyouts, bad business practices, shady characters, plus some of the best hi-fi and the worst hi-fi ever built. If you have a story about SANSUI or any product they made, be sure to share it in the comments, subscribe, like, and share this video in your groups and forums. Now let's get to it. From the 1960s until the 1980s, SANSUI made some of the best audio components ever made. Several product lines that are still loved and have a great sound to this day, not to mention some of the largest and most powerful receivers ever built. SANSUI is one of the most famous names in hi-fi, but they've almost completely disappeared. With the company changing hands so many times, it's extremely difficult to figure out exactly what happened, but I did some digging. I got to the bottom of it. Today you're gonna have all your questions answered about SANSUI and see a lot of the best hi-fi ever made during this journey. Ooh, I'm gonna butcher this guy's name. Kosaku Kichuchi, man, that can't be right, there's not a possible chance, started this small transformer company in Japan in 1947, which would later become a larger factory and a new company in 1960. This company would be called SANSUI. The name SANSUI comes from the Japanese translation of mountain and water. Kichuchi was influenced from the Zen philosophy seen in paintings of nature by famous monk Senshu Toyo. That's probably not right either. These paintings depicted drawings of mountains and landscapes using black ink on white paper. Now this would influence the black faceplate design that SANSUI would use for years to come. Now 9 years after releasing their first tube amplifier into the market, SANSUI introduced what is known as the black panel ancestor in 1965. The SANSUI AU111 was a 40-watt tube integrated amplifier built like a tank. When we had one, I left the top off so you could experience the warm glow of the tubes if you came to see it in the store. 40 watts may not seem like it was much, but it was a powerhouse for its time. Now 2 years later in 1967, SANSUI introduced their first solid-state amplifier. This was the AU777, along with one of my favorite tuners of all time, the TU777. And this would be followed by some lower powered models in the group in 1969. Now all of SANSUI's components in the 1960s shared that design with the black faceplates and the shiny silver knobs with golded painted on or etched lettering. These components didn't look at all like the black faceplate components of the 1980s would look. These were machine grade and almost had a military-like feel. SANSUI would even incorporate this look into their stereo receivers for years to come, always having some sort of either black in the faceplate or in the dial. SANSUI had developed a reputation for making serious audio components which would catapult them to the top of the mountain during the next decade, the 1970s. This is my favorite decade for vintage audio. The components were heavy, made in Japan, and sound absolutely incredible. Looking through the 1969 SANSUI catalog, I saw some prime examples of this. There were incredibly famous receivers and amplifiers in this catalog, such as the SANSUI 5000. And there were even some surprises like the BA202 and the BA303 that resembled more of a Macintosh-style tube amp that I didn't even know existed. They even had a cool chart to recommend matching various components and speakers. You know, as somebody that owns a hi-fi store, I really wish manufacturers would still do that. Sansui would continue to put out models every year during the 1970s, but kind of not in any particular order, though that would change at the start of the Stereo Wars. The Stereo Wars of the 1970s was probably the most exciting time in the history of hi-fi. We have a video on that if you want to explore it more. Now, all the major manufacturers were racing to make the most powerful receivers possible with more bells and whistles than their competitors, and Sansui really ran away with it. I know I talk a lot about Pioneer on this channel. They made some of the best products ever built, but Sansui had two lines of products during the Stereo Wars that are still regarded as the best to this day. The first line of receivers culminates in what I recently named my #2 monster receiver of all time, the Sansui 9090. This receiver series was a well-designed balance of looks and sound quality. Starting at 33 watts for the Sansui 5050 all the way up to the 9090 at 120 watts, the Sansui 9090 provided listeners ample power for lower distortion, power protection, precision circuitry, and an extremely sensitive FM circuit, which was very important at the time. Advanced engineering gave you clear, brilliant sound reproduction with a lot of power headroom. It's literally one of the greatest receivers that I have ever listened to, and if you ever get to listen to it, you will not only hear but feel why. Now, they even made some incredible quad receivers at that time, such as the QRX 9001. The second series Sansui released during the Stereo Wars is the G series. This series started out at entry level, but at its most powerful, the receivers were so big that they had to be built in two pieces. During our recent trip to Chicago, I got to see the G33000 for the first time, and when we were in Idaho, I got to see the G22000 and listen to it for the first time ever. Both receivers were unbelievably monstrous and beautiful at the same time. We also recently got a G9000 in a huge lot that we bought in Texas. Once restored and put out for sale, the G9000 stands out more than most receivers in our store. Even next to the Sansui 9090, the G9000 towers in size and has a look that draws everyone's attention. We actually currently have both these at the front of our store right when you walk in. It's wild. While Sansui held the lead during the Stereo Wars, at various times they didn't win in most people's eyes. That distinction went to Technics. But the G8000, the G9000, the G22000, and the G33000 turned out to be some of the rarest hi-fi components of all time. Not to mention, Sansui during this time was still making their black faceplate AU components, including the professional series, which included the AU11000, the AU9900, and the TU9900, which I believe we have some being restored as we speak. There was also the definition series. This consisted of the BA5000 and BA3000 amplifier, the CA3000 preamp, and the AU20000 integrated amp. I got to see a few of those in Idaho as well. The 1970s, not that I was there, was the hi-fi boom, and one of the best times to get some of the greatest stereo components ever made. And Sansui would carry that into the early 1980s, but the company wouldn't be the same by the time that decade was up. Now, going into this new decade where the industry as a whole was moving to more digital, futuristic products, Sansui had its share of problems. 1 year earlier in 1979, the Japanese yen skyrocketed 38%. Now, this caused a drastic increase in production costs and overall operational costs. Sansui's plan to deal with this was to cut labor. Labor is typically the best way for a company to cut costs, but Sansui had a problem. Since the mid-1970s, Sansui had issues with their employees' labor unions. This made it difficult to impossible to be able to lay off any workers. This gave Sansui absolutely no choice. Without the ability to lay off workers, they had to cut costs by using cheaper parts and shrinking operations. The first series of receivers that you can see this in is the 700 series. This series of receivers still sounds absolutely incredible, and Sansui should be highly praised to be able to pull that off after all those price cuts. But when you break down the build, these receivers were severely lacking in comparison to the 1000 series from a few years before. You can tell that the outer shells of the receivers were already in production when the cost cutting occurred. There's lots of empty space throughout the receiver. This caused the 700 series to be considerably lighter than the 1000 series. Quality would only go down from there, and over the next few lines, they started to develop a wrap for this that they would never recover from. They even tried to change their logo and completely rebrand in 1987. This problem would only get worse at the end of the decade when once again yen would increase, this time 218%. Sales were declining since the mid-80s, losing out to Sony, Pioneer, and Techniques. These factors would cause the company to drop to $100 million in sales by 1988 with a net loss of over $50 million. Now you're talking a net loss in 1988 of $50 million, and that's not good. With sales declining and profits more than in the tank, SANSUI was on the brink. They needed to sell, and they needed to do it fast. SANSUI negotiated with over 20 Japanese, South Korean, and European electronics companies, finally settling on a company that wasn't into electronics at all. In fact, they owned Del Monte, which they recently purchased for $875 million. That's right, they had the market share on bananas, pineapples, and now electronics. That company was Polypek. Polypek was a shell company owned by Asil Nadir. They were a lot like Massimo is today, who owns Sound United and several other brands under that umbrella. Brands such as Denon, Marantz, Class A, Polk, Definitive Technology, Boston Acoustics, and Bowers and Wilkins. Massimo operates almost exactly like Polypek did, with their only goal being to drive up long-term value for their stockholders, no matter what products they sell. They also want to turn millions of home sound systems into health hubs, but that's neither here nor there, I guess. Back to Polypek. Asil Nadir and Polypek would be part of one of the biggest scandals in UK history. In 1988, Polypek had $270 million in profits and $1.5 billion in sales. Nadir would buy the majority stake of 51% in SANSUI in 1989, later increasing their stake to 70% for another $110 million in 1990. But much like Massimo, Polypek's Asil Nadir had a different vision for SANSUI, and that was to go in a broader direction. Instead of high-end hi-fi, Nadir wanted to get SANSUI into TVs, VCRs, CD players, and cheaper-made components. Nadir wanted to focus more on international SANSUI sales than Japanese SANSUI sales. And just to be clear, for the remainder of this video, Japanese SANSUI products are the good stuff, which there'll still be a lot more to come. And international products will be the cheaper SANSUI products you may remember from the 1980s and the 1990s. And not only did Nadir want to take SANSUI in this direction, but he went out and bought AKAI and took them in that direction as well. But that's a story for another day. Nadir's mismanagement of Polypek would lead to its collapse in 1990. He was charged with 66 counts of theft in the UK, and he would then escape the country to North Cyprus, only to return to the UK on bail, where he was sentenced for 10 years behind bars. Now, he only served 4 years of that because when he was transferred to a Turkish prison, you don't know how many takes that took, he was literally released the next day. Now, moving past Polypek into the 1990s, some like to call those Polypek years the SANSUI years. That's when SANSUI changed the mass market products and sold internationally. But let's get back into the 90s, where there are still some great made-in-Japan SANSUI products that are also extremely rare. So the first release from SANSUI in the 90s was the AU907 in 1994. 95 saw the release of the AU-AL907, the 707, and the 607, a whole three-piece line. Then in 1997, we saw the release of the AU-AL607 NRA and the 707 NRA. And that takes us to the final year of Japanese SANSUI production, 1999. And this was actually packed with new releases, including the AU-Alpha 607 MOS, with only 1,000 of those made. And then, the best one ever, I think. This is the final product SANSUI ever made. The AU-111 was re-released as an anniversary edition, nicknamed the Vintage 1999. So this was SANSUI's very first integrated tube amp, re-released as a integrated tube amp in 99. Wild stuff. Now, another cool thing to note here, which I skipped over, was that in 1997, SANSUI was actually sold again, but this time to the same parent company that owned Nakamichi. No longer making hi-fi after the early 2000s, where is SANSUI today? The name's been sold back and forth over the past 30 years, with all of their great hi-fi in the rearview mirror. Only the name remains, which just so happened to be owned by a company in India. The new SANSUI makes TVs, washing machines, refrigerators, air conditioners, and party speakers. I actually even saw some of the TVs available at Walmart.com. See, you can still buy SANSUI products new in 2023. And for SANSUI's new slogan, SANSUI, founded in Japan, made for India. Now, SANSUI no longer exists, but JBL does, but that doesn't mean they're without a storied past that you have to hear to believe. Speakers 100 years ago were a lot different than they are now, but one thing hasn't changed. The fact that JBL has been with us for the entire journey. From early studio monitors, guitar amps, loudspeakers, powering the biggest concerts of all time. Wait, was that Woodstock 99? Oh, this is going to be wild. To newer speakers, boomboxes, Bluetooth speakers, and even the resurgence of classic hi-fi. JBL had some of the most influential products of all time, but with every brand, there's a story. This is JBL. Do you have a story about JBL? Have you ever owned a JBL product? Or maybe you haven't, you just want to give me your 2 cents on the brand. Be sure to do so in the comments. Born James Martini in Greenwich, Illinois in 1902, at 10 he built a Leyden jar to play tricks on his friends. At 12, he built his first radio transmitter, which reached a naval station, resulting in government representatives literally coming to his house to disassemble it. After attending a small college in Springfield, Illinois, James worked in an automotive shop as a mechanic. He would move to Salt Lake City. This is where he would not only meet his wife-to-be, but also his future business partner, Ken Decker. Decker and Lansing would move to LA and establish the Lansing Manufacturing Company in 1927. Later joined by 2 of his younger brothers, Bill and George, they would establish their permanent headquarters at 6900 McKinley Avenue by 1933. They were then discovered by MGM Studios, who was not happy with the horns that Western Electric had been supplying to them. With the help of John Hillard, Lansing would develop the Shearer MGM system. And in 1938, Western Electric was forced by the government to stop making loudspeakers and amplifiers. See, the government felt that they held too much of a monopoly over the field of motion picture sound. A group of engineers working for Western Electric at the time would buy the affected stock holdings for the cost of just $1, rebranding as Altec. In 1939, Ken Decker, Lansing's business partner, the true mastermind behind the business and management side of Lansing Manufacturing, was tragically killed in a plane crash. Without his expertise, the company suffered. By 1941, Lansing was almost out of business, and the management team at Altec were well aware. They made an offer of $50,000 to purchase Lansing Corp on December 4th, 1941. They would then rename the company Altec Lansing Corp. and sign James Lansing to a 5-year contract as VP of Engineering. Lansing, with the stability of the merger, was free to perfect the process of loudspeaker manufacturing. Notable systems during this time included the 604 and the A4. Now, when Lansing sold his company, it was with all understanding that all company trade names and assets would remain the property of the new company. He would also agree that he would not go into competition with Altec Lansing for a period of 5 years. Lansing left the company on the day the contract was up to start Lansing Sound. The first product they produced, the D101, was a near copy of Altec's Model 515. Now, Lansing was never focused on business affairs, and financial problems surfaced almost immediately, leading to an agreement with Roy Marquardt's aviation firm in 1947. However, by 1949, Marquardt was acquired by the General Tire Company and severed ties with Lansing. After that, the company moved to its 4th location in Los Angeles, with William Thomas from Marquardt joining Lansing as vice president. The constant movement of the company was not without its adverse effects on production, and there were never enough funds to pay all the suppliers. Perhaps Lansing's growing depression came from the realization that history was about to repeat itself. He drove to St. Marcos, and despondent over the course of business, his life came to a tragic end. Now, a few years earlier, Lansing had been wise enough to secure a life insurance policy in the name of the company. The policy was for $10,000, and it was payment on this policy that enabled Bill Thomas to secure the future of the company. In 1955, the brand name JBL was introduced to resolve ongoing disputes with the Altec Lansing Corporation. The company name James B. Lansing Sound Incorporated was retained, but the logo name was changed to JBL with its distinct exclamation point. Now, soon after this, they released one of their most famous and largest speakers of all time, the Paragon. At 9 feet wide and almost $2,000 in 1957, this would become JBL's longest produced speaker, finally replaced by the JBL Everest in 1983. Now, during the 60s, JBL would become well known for their studio monitors. First with the introduction of the D50, which was used in every studio owned by Capitol Records. Later in the decade, to expand their customer base, JBL introduced the 4320 studio monitor and the 4310 studio monitor, which was the predecessor to the famed JBL L100. Now, by 1977, more recording studios were using JBL monitors than any other brand combined, according to a survey by Billboard. Now, not only was JBL used in studios, but in music in general and the playing of it. JBL's introduction to rock and roll music came via the adoption of the D130 loudspeaker by Leo Fender's Fender Guitar Company as the ideal driver for electric guitars. But that wasn't the only rock and roll history that JBL was part of. A system that could provide sound for the size crowd we expected did not exist. Michael Lang. 500,000 people waited on a 600-acre farm in Bethel, New York for the 3-day music festival to start. Meanwhile, the people putting on the show, John Roberts, Joel Rosenman, Artie Cornfield, and Michael Lang, were panicking over the giant mess they got themselves into. Woodstock had a last-minute change of venue from Wallkill, New York to a farm in Bethel. This caused chaos in planning. Roads were shut down from the amount of traffic. Chain-link fences around the field weren't completed, which eventually led to the concert being declared absolutely free. Plans for food, sanitation, and transportation were rushed and inadequate, which created shared hardships that unified the audience. At the forefront of this concert was the sound system, its amplification powered by over 20 Macintosh MC3500s. Its speakers custom built. The line array of speakers were stacked on 2 bright yellow 70-foot scaffolding towers on either side of the stage. These speakers consisted of JBL drivers. Hanley put 8 drivers in each speaker. Now, this wasn't the only major concert powered by JBL. The Grateful Dead's Wall of Sound, designed in 1953 by Owsley Stanley, was the largest hi-fi system ever built, consisting of 48 Macintosh MC2300 amplifiers, 54 EV tweeters, and 586 JBL D130 loudspeakers. This generated 28,800 watts of power. If you want to learn more about that, watch our video on the Macintosh 2300 and the Wall of Sound. Years later, JBL would be used again in one more mega concert, Woodstock 99. But this concert wasn't filled with as much peace and love as the first one. It turned into an all-out rage party. It was bad. Very bad. Although if you asked attendees, some say it was the greatest experience of their life. Lang looked at it as a lost opportunity. Now, the 1970s saw JBL become a household brand, starting with the famous L100, which was the best-selling loudspeaker model of any company to that time, selling over 125,000 pairs during the 70s alone. The L100 was designed by Bart LaCanthi, who was JBL's vice president of engineering. After designing the JBL L100, though, LaCanthi would get into a disagreement with JBL and leave for Pioneer in 1975. Once at Pioneer, he would set out to do one thing: build a speaker with the sole purpose of beating out the JBL L100. Pioneer gave him a massive, almost unlimited budget to do so. Along with his team, he designed the Pioneer HPM 100s, which alongside the JBL 100s are the most popular speakers built during this era. The 1970s were a decade that established JBL as a preeminent manufacturer in the professional sound industry. Sticking with that worked, and they expanded the 4300 line. This line would become famous not only due to its sound, but by the artists and musicians who had them in their studios. When the Who built their first studio in the mid-1970s, they installed 12 JBL 4350 monitors. The 4350s were the highest output monitors JBL produced at the time. The 1970s were filled with several other popular JBL limited products, but my favorite speaker was not so well known. The JBL L25 Prima was released in 1970 at $159 each and could be accompanied by the SM25 storage module. They were marketed to consumers who not only wanted good sound, but good aesthetics as well. These speakers were built in a colored thermoplastic enclosure, available in multiple colors with coordinated grills. I saw a pair of these last year at Nashville's Lane Motor Museum. The service tech was an audiophile and had a pair in the basement on top some BOSE 901 stands. And best of all, they were yellow, and I knew I had to have them. I found a pair online and completely restored them, and even changed the color in the process to yellow. You can see these in one of our listening rooms if you ever come by the store. They had a distinctive beachy West Coast sound unlike anything that I've ever heard. Not the biggest, not the best, but they were a joy to listen to. The 1980s saw products such as the flagship L250, which was one of the most critically acclaimed speakers JBL ever built, a four-way speaker with a very wide dynamic range. These massive speakers even had a matching subwoofer, the B460, which came with the BX63 equalizer. The B460 featured an 18-inch driver and 3 bass ports on the side. Pictures don't really do any justice to how big this 125-pound subwoofer really was. On the studio monitor side, JBL continued with the 4300 series, but we also saw the introduction of the 4600 series. The 4600 series included products built for live on-stage use as well as in the studio. One other thing JBL allowed you to do during the 70s, 80s, and even the 90s was customizing your speakers. You purchased the bass drivers, mid-range drivers, tweeters, horns, crossovers, literally whatever parts you wanted, and put them in your own custom cabinets, or even purchase JBL's cabinets to install them in. This would provide JBL an edge over the competition, giving the musician or producer the JBL sound in any customizable format that they choose. This would help sustain JBL through the next 2 decades. Now, one speaker around the turn of the millennium that really stood out to me was the TIC series. This series was not just about sound, but design. The design was used to reduce standing waves, and they even made these to incorporate into high-end home theater systems that were extremely popular at the time, and they even came in special edition colors. JBL, who to this day is still under Harman, a subsidiary of Samsung, is still making more audio products than ever. Now, they may be more known for their Bluetooth or portable speakers that give people an experience no matter where they are, from karaoke's and drinks on the beach to being the life of the party. Now, I got to play around with some of these, and they were quite fun and sounded good. And they expand the JBL line to younger people and give the end user more portable ways of bringing their music with them. They even have a store in New York that features all the aforementioned items. For musicians and music professionals, almost every song has been played through a JBL speaker at one point or another. But to audiophiles and music lovers, their newest lines of classic speakers and components are what really turned heads. We recently got to experience some of these, and they really did a great job harnessing the nostalgia of the past into both their components and speakers of the present day. They redesigned the L100s, the L82s, and the L52s, while also developing new components with a classic silver finish and wood trim. This is one company that has held true to their roots while expanding their products to the masses. This is why JBL has survived all these years, and they will continue to strive in the future. Now, JBL wasn't totally full of controversy, but the next brand is. BOSE over the years has done some pretty shady stuff, and today I'm going to expose it. BOSE is one of the largest home audio brands of all time. Music enthusiasts love them, audiophiles love to hate them, and today we're looking at the best BOSE products, BOSE's biggest controversies, and even some BOSE conspiracies. Now's the time to pull them out of the pile of old boxes in your basement and get them fixed, or trade them in for 40% off when you buy a new BOSE product. Now, if you have any stories about BOSE, be sure to leave them in the comments, but I want to share with you one of mine and how that ties into this video. Now, I remember prior to BOSE closing all their brick and mortar stores in 2020, going into my local mall, sitting down in the BOSE demo room, trying out their products. BOSE, to me, used to always use the bait and switch approach to their selling, which, hey, I give them props. It worked for them for years. The salesman would sit you down in a dark and overly acoustic treated room, press play on the TV, and you'd watch as a baseball broke through a window and shattered pieces of glass all around you.
You won't just hear glass break. You'll hear a slightly battered and bruised baseball fly past your right ear.
The average person would be blown away, and the salesman would then ask, hey, where do you think that sound was coming from? Expecting you to look all around the room, only to be told it's coming from this little soundbar under the TV. Yes, the audio did come from that small soundbar under the TV, but the magic behind it is anything but little. This would include thousands of dollars of room acoustics to create the ultimate experience. You would then be shocked and say, I have to have that product, only to get it home and it just didn't have the same effect. Now, BOSE is one of the biggest names in home audio and has been since 1964. Best known for their compact home audio systems, speakers, headphones, professional products, and even truck seats. BOSE was established by Amar Bose, a career professor at MIT. Now, Amar passed away in 2013, but 2 years before his passing, Amar donated his non-voting shares to MIT so that they would receive cash dividends going forward from BOSE. Now, BOSE launched their first product in 1966. This was the 2201. It was an unusual design built into 1/8 of a sphere. It was designed to sit in a corner of a room, and it consisted of 22 speakers using reflections off the wall to attempt to increase the size of the room. Now, each speaker had a built-in 50-watt transistor amplifier, and each speaker was hand-built, and there were only 32 pairs in existence, and that could be off by 1 or 2 numbers. The 2201 was a large speaker, about 24 by 24, weighing in at over 50 pounds. The objective of building the 2201 was to make it subjectively indistinguishable from the sound which is produced by the ideal pulsating sphere. Now, unfortunately, for many reasons, the 2201 was destined to fail, and after only 3 years on the market, it was discontinued. But not before paving the way to the product that would define BOSE for the next 7 decades. The best measure of audio quality is the listener's perception. This was the theory Amar Bose put into all his speakers and product designs going forward. And this would be no more prevalent than in the design of the BOSE 901. There may be no singular product in modern audio history that has generated more accolades and more controversy than that of the BOSE 901 loudspeaker. Introduced in 1968, the BOSE 901 looked and sounded unlike any other speaker before it, consisting of a pentagonal cabinet which faced 8 drivers at the walls behind the speaker to reflect the sound throughout the room into a giant soundstage, and 1 driver towards the listener as well. The 901 included an equalizer box that was required to get proper sound out of the speakers, and you could power them with up to 270 watts to each one, meaning that they would handle every bit of the power from the HiFi Holy Grail Pioneer SX 1980. Priced at $460 at launch, there were several good and several poor reviews for the speakers, but many credit the sure marketing of BOSE for the success of the 901s. Now, the 901 Series 1 sold from 1968 until 1973 when BOSE introduced the Series 2. Now, my personal favorite of the Series 2 was the Continental because it had just a bit more style than the rest and actually even resembled the Series 3. In 1976, BOSE introduced just that. The 901 Series 3, which was the first bass reflex design. This was to accommodate lower powered amplifiers. This was the only radical acoustic change in the entire series, with the 4 being almost identical. Now, upon release of the Series 5, BOSE would add a coating to the back of the speakers to smooth out the low treble and high mid-range. Series 5 also included aluminum sides, which were not well received and finally replaced with the Series 6, which had removed those aluminum sides and had some changes in equalization as well, because developers found that the acoustics in the average home had changed over the years. Now, one downside to the Series 3 through Series 6 was that over time, the foam surrounds would deteriorate and need to be replaced. Now, the final BOSE 901 was the Series 6 V2, which returned us to the cloth surrounds nearly 50 years after the original. Now, of course, BOSE made several other speakers over the years, from bookshelves to floor standing, that were received with the same type of love and hate as the 901s. Now, in the 1980s, BOSE had a new dilemma on their hands. BOSE realized their customers of the 1970s were growing up and starting families. They would need a new, smaller speaker. Home video was growing and many people were putting in home theaters. But how does BOSE get a new, smaller speaker, a lesser quality product, into the hands of customers who already have something superior that they paid good money for just years earlier? This is where the BOSE Acoustimass AM5 would come into play. They knew in launching this product, many people would want to get new speakers for less of a footprint. But what would they do with their old speakers, and how could BOSE ensure its current customer base would upgrade only to a BOSE product to fit into this new trend? How could they get more BOSE speakers into the hands that people had already bought BOSE speakers? Not to mention, these newer speakers did not not sound as good as the speakers that they already have. The answer to that was the introduction of the AM5 trade-in program. Bose would let the consumer trade in any of their old Bose speakers regardless of its condition for at least $100 off the new AM5 speaker system. This resulted in the AM5s becoming so popular they would represent 30% of the US speaker market. Now, just this one speaker, not Bose as a whole. The Acoustimask became so popular, literally 1 in 3 homes had it. Now, being a repair center, over the years we've seen countless Bose products come through the door, never easy to fix. We stopped working on them because Bose kept their schematics and parts to themselves. But we would still hear the stories of Bose not wanting to provide service to fix the customers' radios that they spent literal thousands of dollars on just a few years before. No. Instead, they would offer the customer 40% off a new Bose product with the trade-in of their old one. Now, that being said, what other company offers you the ability to constantly trade in and up to a new product when your old product breaks? For that, Bose should be commended. It's a great way to keep sales coming even when times are tough. Now it's time for some controversy and conspiracy. Bose maintained a great reputation with the average US consumer who wasn't concerned with specs or sound quality and just wanted a versatile product that fits their needs. And there's nothing wrong with that. In the audio enthusiast world, it was actually quite the opposite through the years. In 2007, Audioholics Online magazine stated the Bose Lifestyle V20 system was very expensive at $2,000, and the sound quality really isn't any better than other surround systems costing a third of the price. Then in 2012, NBC News said the 46-inch $5,000 Bose VideoWave 2 TV resembled most closely a $740 flat panel, which actually had more options like a tuner. This was at the time the most expensive TV on the market. Now, Bose didn't take kindly to bad reviews over the years. In 1981, Bose unsuccessfully sued Consumer Reports for saying their Bose 901 speakers made individual instruments sound gigantic and the sound tended to wander around the room. In the early 1990s, Bose also sued Teal Audio to stop them from using the .2 at the end of their product model numbers, such as the CS 2.2, because Bose trademarked the .2. Teal then replaced the .2 with a space, making the new product model the CS2 Space 2. Then going forward, they changed their next models to .3 because Bose didn't trademark that. Several other trademark lawsuits would follow in the upcoming years with Bose, suing the likes of JBL, Infinity, QSC, and even Beats. Now, over the years, I've heard a lot of good and a lot of bad about Bose, and let's face it, it's not the same company that it once was. But the industry as a whole is ever evolving and not what it was 10, 20, 30, 40, and especially not 50 years ago, or is it? What's old is new, vintage is here, and what vintage means to you may depend on what decade you grew up in, where you didn't have the money to buy what you really wanted, or maybe you bought it back then and remember having it. Now you want it again to enjoy and to maybe share with your kids. Now, recently Bose made the news again with a massive recall. Bose just recalled the Acoustimask Lifestyle and Companion bass modules purchased before 2009 due to a fire hazard, stating the speaker's electrical components can fail, posing that hazard. Now, this was based on 3 fires only resulting in damage to the entertainment center or the bass module itself, with no injuries. This recall was on a total of over 1 million bass modules sold since 1994. Several models are included in this recall, so if you have them, hey, now's the time to pull them out of the pile of old boxes in your basement and get them fixed, or trade them in for 40% off when you buy a new Bose product. This is a product that you can find in any Goodwill, in your relative's basement, and every online marketplace there is. Literally everyone has or has had one of these at some point. Now, in a year after what could be considered the audio boom, while everyone was home, many manufacturers' sales have since slowed down and they're sitting on massive amounts of inventory that's not moving because people aren't stuck in their houses anymore. Now, that's when Bose launches a recall that allows you to trade in an old subwoofer box that hundreds of thousands of people have and are no longer using to get 40% off a new Bose product. Now, there is a real recall here with potential safety hazards, but it couldn't have come at a better time for Bose, who may have been trying to figure out a way to get their new speakers into the hands of people who already had their products and no longer use them. Often controversial, BOSE has always been a top-notch marketing first company, always trying to build better products for a new generation. They are a passionate company and have pride in keeping BOSE legacy alive. They develop products used everywhere you look, from the home, on the field, to the road, and even in the air. BOSE isn't going anywhere, and their products will only innovate more over time. That vintage hi-fi enthusiast in me wants them to go back to their roots and release a heritage speaker line that brings back hi-fi into the BOSE lineup. At that point, I'll go find some old Acoustimas and trade them in for the good stuff. Now, I got so much feedback from the comment section of that video that I decided to expose them just a little more. BOSE, one of the most recognizable brands in home audio, is either loved or hated, and that has never been more apparent to me than after reading all the comments on my original BOSE exposed video. People either love or hate BOSE. But the one thing reading those comments and doing more digging taught me, it's that the controversy and conspiracy behind BOSE goes much deeper than I originally thought. This is a video that I produced for you, but more importantly, everything in this video is by you, the viewer. So to all of our viewers, thank you for contributing and continue to do so in this video and in others in the future. Spam the comments with your opinions, because unlike many other channels, we want you to be part of this one. BOSE, who was once known during the 1970s and the 1980s for their unique speaker lines and even receivers, is now selling only lifestyle products, such as headphones, Bluetooth speakers, soundbars, and even sunglasses. But while the majority of people relate BOSE's name to a high-quality product, like Apple for example, the majority of audiophiles hate BOSE. In the 1970s and the 1980s, all BOSE dealers would be required to have a dedicated area in their store for BOSE products. And on top of that, BOSE dealers were banned for life if they didn't follow every single regulation put in place by the corporation. First being, it was a mandatory rule that they didn't want their speakers placed next to or even compared to any other brands of speakers. Could this be because they didn't want their consumer to pick a better speaker over theirs, or just that they wanted to be perceived as a brand in its own class that shouldn't be mixed in with lesser products? BOSE would not allow dealers to do any A/B demos at all. Any dealers who would place speakers outside the dedicated room or perform those A/B speaker demos would be completely cut off by BOSE. If a store was cut off, they would be stuck with all of their inventory and drop prices so low that they can barely make up the cost of the products. As a hi-fi store owner, it would be a nightmare to have systems and not be able to demo various speakers to give the customer their best options. One of our viewers who was able to secretly mix in BOSE with other products said, "I remember when BOSE created separated demo display areas in stores away from the retailer's showrooms to focus on the marketing message and to lessen the chance of direct A/B comparisons with other brands." Now, I've never had so many comments in a video on different acronyms that a company stands for. And of course, the company is BOSE's last name, but you guys came up with some wild stuff in the comments, and I'd love to know which one of these are your favorites, so spam the comments of this video with your favorite acronyms. So here's what our viewers said. Bloody ordinary sound equipment. Bring other sound equipment. Or buy other sound equipment. Better off with something else. Or even better off selling everything. So one of our viewers even had the subtitles turned on our video and said every time I said BOSE, it came through as booze. There were also famous phrases that describe BOSE. One of our viewers said the BOSE AM5 Acoustimas was known as the Acoustamess. And of course, no highs, no lows, it must be BOSE. Or no highs, no lows. When it blows, you know it's BOSE. Now, some would even say BOSE actually stood for Better Sound Through Litigation. Rumor has it that it is widely known from people in the industry that BOSE had more lawyers than engineers. And no case would this ring more true than in BOSE versus the Consumer Union, a case that would end up in the Supreme Court. The magazine Consumer Reports had published in 1970 a review of an unusual loudspeaker system manufactured by the BOSE Corporation, called the BOSE 901. The review expressed skepticism of the system's quality and recommended that consumers delay purchase until they had investigated for themselves whether the loudspeaker system's unusual attributes would suit them. Bose objected to numerous statements in this article, including the sentences, "Worse, individual instruments heard through the Bose system seemed to grow to gigantic proportions and tended to wander around the room. For instance, a violin appeared to be 10 feet wide, and a piano stretched from wall to wall." Bose demanded a retraction when they learned that Consumer Reports changed what the original reviewer wrote about the speakers in his pre-publication draft, which the magazine refused to do. The New York Times featured an article that said, because Consumer Reports wrote this, the Massachusetts District Court ordered the magazine to pay the manufacturer $210,000 in damages. What it should have written, according to the federal judge who heard the case, was that the sounds moved along the wall. That would have been a high price to pay for imprecise language, and a mighty tax on free expression generally. Fortunately, the Supreme Court has reaffirmed free speech values by ruling that the price need not be paid. Justice John Paul Stevens wrote for the court, "The difference between hearing violin sounds move around the room and hearing them wander back and forth fits easily within the breathing space that gives life to the First Amendment. If Bose was injured, the cure lies not in off-the-wall legal opinions, but in a multiplicity of free speakers." One of our viewers even said, "Bose, if you can't build a better product, sue." Bose to me was always known for their bait and switch demos. Going into a store, you heard one thing, and when you got it home, you heard another. Or if you were like some of our viewers, maybe you saw the tactics firsthand. Oh, I remember setting up so many Bose Acoustimass speaker systems for home theater customers. It always pained me greatly to have to look the customer in the face while outright lying to them about how wonderful their new overpriced system sounded. It was complete and utter junk. I remember going into a Bose brick and mortar store and sitting through one of their presentations where you're going to a room to hear this phenomenal sound coming from these great looking speakers. And then what they do is lift those great looking speakers up in the air to show these little cubes which are actually producing the sound. Then of course a sales rep would try to sell you a $5,000 Acoustimass system that, if I bought it, would replace the $2,000 system I already had that sounded terrific. Now we know those rooms were actually heavily equalized and acoustically treated in order to get that sound. In 1970, me and a friend went to a consumer products HiFi show and went to the Bose room, and after the demonstration, we asked if we could turn up the volume on them, and he wouldn't do it. So we went back after everybody left and turned on the tape he was playing, slowly turning up the volume, and those things sounded like they were going to explode. Just distorted all over the place and sounding terrible. My Acoustimass subwoofer caught on fire 10 years ago. The recall on those subs for a 40% off discount on a new system is actually some brilliant marketing. You can bet the margins on those new Bose speakers are high enough that even with the trade-in, Bose is making a healthy profit. Product safety recalls usually result in millions of dollars of company losses, not opportunities to make more money. I worked at a Bose store and noticed that their wave radios were always demoing on a hollow pedestal. They were creating an illusion of deeper bass. It never sounded the same way when you played them at home. I recall my old sound rooms and having 301s, 501s, 601s, comparing them to other brands, and as a serious pro and enthusiast of good audio, those speakers actually did sound good, compared well to other marquee brands we had in the rooms. Bose does know how to build a good product, but the insane profit margins and ease of manufacturing of the Acoustimass line just really completely diverted the company away from what we call HiFi. Now, we heard a lot of comments and thoughts and acronyms of Bose from you, the viewers, but if you didn't make this video, be sure to leave another comment. Let me know what your thoughts on Bose are. And there's one more brand that's left, and that's a brand that's still around today, but they have had a controversial history, and that's Marantz. Marantz, the historic brand synonymous with high-fidelity sound, started out as a small company to give listeners a better experience, and it grew into one of the most iconic hi-fi brands of all time. But like many audio companies of the past, they could now be on the verge of extinction. This is what really happened to Marantz. In the 1950s, the world of audio recordings faced a significant challenge: records with erratic and inconsistent recording characteristics. Saul Marantz, a music aficionado, graphic artist, and an amateur musician, was disheartened by the lackluster equipment of the era. In 1952, he took matters into his own hands and birthed a groundbreaking preamplifier, the Audio Consulette. This monotube preamplifier boasted every equalizer curve essential to tame the inconsistent recording traits of the time. Its intricacies lay in its 3 vacuum tubes, 2 designated for phono circuits and 1 for modulating the sound. Yet what truly set it apart were its high-quality components, from the bumblebee capacitors to the low-noise carbon resistors, elevating it to an unparalleled pedestal of audio quality. This innovation wasn't just a machine, it was a testament to craftsmanship and detail. The Consulette's exterior, with its wooden panels, golden grille, and distinctive brass screws, was an aesthetic treat. It was so impressive that Saul's first prototype, built on his kitchen table, garnered immense appreciation from close ones, propelling him to commercialize it. The initial 100 units flew off the shelves, marking the dawn of the Audio Consulette's demand. Operating from Kew Gardens, New York, Saul continually refined his design. By 1953, with the expertise of Sid Smith, a World War II radio technician turned electronics savant, the Audio Consulette evolved into the Marantz Model 1, cementing both Saul and Sid's legacies in the annals of sound reproduction history. Now, faced with large back orders, Saul opened the first Marantz factory in Queens, New York in 1953. The Marantz company was established and ready to begin its journey into the world of audio equipment with the commercial introduction of the Model 1 preamplifier, a direct descendant of the Audio Consulette. The success of the Model 1 paved the way for other remarkable creations by Marantz, including the Model 7 preamplifier in 1958, the powerful Model 9 amplifier in 1960, and the Model 10B FM stereo tuner by 1964. The Model 9 was a testament to Marantz's dedication and excellence. It boasted unparalleled control and power stability. Its exceptional performance caught the attention of none other than NASA. The innovative circuitry of the Model 9 was customized for the Apollo space program, ensuring consistent current in tracking stations, even in remote parts of the globe where stability was hard to come by. While Marantz's contribution to the Apollo missions may have been niche, it was undeniably pivotal. This legacy of innovation and partnership continues to inspire the brand's endeavors to this day. In 1964, Saul Marantz faced an influential moment in the company's history when he sold the Marantz company to Superscope Inc. This decision was driven by various necessities that compelled Marantz to make this significant change. Even as Marantz's name continued to resonate with high-quality audio equipment, Saul's direct influence on the company's product direction began to wane post-acquisition. One of the coolest pieces of nostalgia that I have found on this is the 1967 dealer sheet. That's right, this isn't a catalog, it's the dealer sheet with cost and retail. Not only did it feature some of the most iconic early Marantz products, such as the Model 7T, the Model 9 monoblock, the Model 10B tuner, the SLT-12U turntable, the Model 14 monoamp, and the Model 15 stereo amp, but it featured Marantz's sales policies at the time, their advertising policies, media policies, including radio advertising, and even info on local trade shows. But best of all, retail and cost prices on all the previous mentioned models, plus even an accessory section with wood cabinets and dust covers. This was also the year when the company ventured into manufacturing its products in Japan through a collaboration with Standard Radio Corp, which would later rebrand itself as Marantz Japan Incorporated, reflecting its alignment with the Marantz legacy. Throughout this period under Superscope's guidance, the Marantz brand proliferated worldwide, introducing a range of high-fidelity audio products from stereo amplifiers to record players. Saul Marantz, having held on to his presidential role post-sale, eventually stepped down in 1968, marking a brief retirement from his storied career in audio innovation. Under the ownership of Superscope, a company made famous for production of Sony reel-to-reels, the Marantz brand embarked on developing the Marantz 7700 II. This was a unique tape recorder boasting a 3-head, 3-motor dual capstan construction, and it stands out as a rare gem in the audio world. While it graced events such as the 1978 Audio Fair and the Las Vegas CES show, the Marantz 7700 II never transitioned to mass production. Only 10 of these meticulously crafted machines emerged from the Japanese development laboratory, making it a coveted artifact among audio enthusiasts. Despite its promise, this exceptional model intriguingly never became a staple in Marantz's product line. In the world of vintage audio aesthetics, Marantz's Blueface era of the 1970s stands unparalleled. This distinctive period is defined by the blue-tinted backlighting on Marantz receivers, complemented by a brushed aluminum front, gyro-touch tuning, and symmetrically arranged controls. Beyond their mesmerizing experience, these receivers, including the iconic models like the Marantz 2270 and the Marantz 2325, are revered for their robust construction and meticulous detail. As many of these units remain operational today, they continue to captivate collectors and music lovers alike. The 70s witnessed seismic shifts in music from rock and roll dominance to disco's emergence. Amidst this musical renaissance, Marantz's Blueface receivers emerged as quintessential partners, perfectly encapsulating the decade's aesthetic vibe. Moreover, they played a crucial role during the Stereo Wars, an intense period where audio brands vied for the supremacy and power, features, and design. Marantz wasn't merely a participant, but a trendsetter in these wars. The brand, already renowned for its high-quality audio equipment, launched power behemoths like the Marantz 2500 and the Marantz 2600, boasting up to 300 watts per channel. These models, laden with advanced features from sophisticated tone controls to multiple inputs and outputs, cemented Marantz's stature as a premium name. Have you ever wished to be transported back to the golden era of hi-fi stereo to see Marantz receivers in all their glory? That's precisely the sensation we've recreated in our store. Inspired by the vibrant decades of the 1970s and the 1980s, every corner of our space resonates with the Stereo Wars era. As you wander through, you'll be greeted by iconic stereo receivers reminiscent of a time when music wasn't just heard, but deeply felt. Plus, we craft wood cases for almost every Marantz model. Relive the nostalgia and discover why so many still hail these as Marantz's pinnacle creations. Now, in the late 70s, the global oil crisis and economic pressures compelled Marantz, under Superscope's guidance, to navigate the delicate balance between high-powered offerings and affordability. To manage rising costs, the brand strategically transitioned its manufacturing from Japan to other parts of Asia, harnessing cost-effective production processes that maintained its competitive edge in pricing. The transition not only expanded Marantz's product range, appealing to both audiophiles and a broader audience, but it also sparked debates among brand loyalists. Yet many recognized that the brand's commitment to excellence remained unwavering, irrespective of its production location. The 1980s witnessed the revolutionary rise of the compact disc, a groundbreaking playback technology co-developed by Philips and Sony, forever changing the way we consume music. This digital innovation was celebrated for its crisp sound, uninterrupted playback, and resistance to the common nuances of scratches and pops. Amidst the global fascination with CDs, a standout player emerged, the Marantz Model CD63. Released in the fall of 1982, the CD63 was among the pioneers of mass-adopted CD players, combining both top-notch craftsmanship with timeless design elements. Recognizable by its top loading style and signature champagne hue, it resonated with the 1980s aesthetic. The CD63 not only championed design, but also demonstrated Marantz's engineering prowess, with advanced features such as oversampling for a richer sound experience, boasting elements borrowed from renowned models like the Philips CD100 and the Grundig CD30. The CD63 showcased Marantz's ability to elevate standard components to create an iconic piece of audio equipment. Initially priced at around $325, this model remains a collector's favorite even to today, encapsulating high-performance sound with futuristic artistic allure. Adding to its cultural impact, a Marantz CD player even earned a spot on popular TV, with a cameo on the show The Goldbergs. The episode titled I Drank the Mold was focused around a gold Marantz stack and the release of the CD, further cementing its influence and relevance in pop culture. Marantz not only made audio products in the 1980s, but they dipped their toes into the video landscape as well, with products like the MR965 TV, multiple VCR models, and AV receivers. Products that I had no idea were even a thing. But Marantz's future would be one without the company that brought Marantz to the forefront up until this time. Superscope decided to part ways with Marantz. In 1987, Superscope sold Marantz to Dynascan, a company primarily known for its Cobra brand of CB radios. Over time, however, in response to the rapidly evolving audio-video industry, Dynascan would eventually opt to sell Marantz to Philips in 1992, allowing Marantz to enter another phase in its storied journey. The 1990s were full of mainstream Marantz products. A catalog from that era would be filled with everything you can think of. The high-end products such as the PM95 were still there, but so were TVs, CD players, digital line transformers, and even these speakers that honestly just kind of look like subwoofers. Now, Philips sold its stake in Marantz in the early 2000s to Marantz Japan. Then they merged with Denon to form D&M Holdings. This merger brought together two iconic brands under one umbrella, and they continue to operate as separate entities within D&M Holdings, preserving their unique brand identities and heritages. By coming together under the D&M Holdings umbrella, they sought to combine their strengths, leverage synergies, and navigate a rapidly changing audiovisual market more efficiently. Then in 2017, D&M Holdings, by then known as D&M Group, was acquired by Sound United, the parent company of several other audio brands. This acquisition meant that Marantz, alongside Denon, transitioned to yet another chapter in its storied history, but under the wing of a parent company deep-rooted in audio. But it all may be coming to an end. In a perplexing twist of corporate strategy, 2022 witnessed the rebranding of Sound United as Massimo, who orchestrated the acquisition of the iconic audio brands Marantz, Hios, Denon, Class A, Polk Audio, Bowers & Wilkins, and Deftech. But what makes this merger more mysterious than the rest? Dive deeper and the plot thickens. Massimo, originating in 1989, is rooted not in sound, but in medical technology. Intriguingly, Sound United doesn't even make a cameo in Massimo's company history. Massimo's mission? To pioneer cutting-edge monitoring technologies. And you may ponder, what strange twist connects Marantz to this medical titan? Massimo's founder and CEO, Joe Caiani, offers a clue. He said, "We're all thrilled to add Sound United's premium technology to Massimo's broad portfolio of hospital and home medical technology solutions. We believe Massimo's expertise, combined with Sound United's audio and home automation technologies, will bring about natural solutions to people around the globe in home and in hospitals. Massimo will leverage Sound United's expertise across consumer channels to accelerate distribution of the company's expanding portfolio of consumer-facing healthcare products." Now, the pieces of this intricate puzzle are aligning, hinting at a future where sound and health may be intertwined in ways previously unimagined. In the shadowy corridors of corporate acquisitions, something seems amiss with Massimo's purchase of Sound United. Could it be that Massimo, known for its health monitoring technologies, is covertly using Sound United not for its audio prowess, but as a Trojan horse to infiltrate our homes? Sources hint that Massimo might be updating home audio systems to double as health data hubs by the end of 2023. While health technology in itself is an advantage, the covert matter of this move raises eyebrows. One can't help but remember the tales of brands like AKAI and SANSUI, once titans of the audio world. They vanished after being acquired by conglomerates with hidden agendas. Is Marantz, the legendary audio brand, being unwittingly led down a similar path to obscurity? Only time will unveil the truth, but the echoes of history sound an ominous warning.